Hello chess friends and welcome to your of Chess channel and welcome back to our Catalan opening studies. So in this studies we have seen some very important sidelines, variation, opportunities for both sides in this beautiful opening, and today we're continuing with our Catalan opening playlist with the so-called Botvinnik Variation. The Botvinnik Variation is this setup that I've already prepared for you. So you see White played already aggressively in the center with the move c4, played queen to d3, which is a certain preparation to break and enter with the move e4. This line you see many times. This whole concept, the whole concept of e4 is many times the main progressive idea of White in the Catalan opening, to simply break and enter here in the center, punishing also a little bit this passive structure by Black. We have to say that this firm structure c6, d5, e6 is creating your compact position in the center of the board, but it is a little bit passive because many of your pawns are on the 6th rank. You really didn't challenge the center immediately. You didn't put your pawns on e5, c5. You never broke the center. So in my opinion, this line you face many times, and then you want to know, of course, what you're doing. So in my opinion, very important how to know to play against the Botvinnik variation. So that's why we are solving this positional problems of the Botvinnik with the black pieces now in this particular video. So the instructive game that will follow is a beautiful, sharp, tactical gameplay by Jeroen Piket against the legendary Lev Polugaevsky back from 1994. I think Lev Polugaevsky showed here really how to counterplay, how to battle it out, how to defend the Botvinnik variation in a beautiful tactical way. And we'll see also different sidelines. We'll see also beautiful gameplay by Humpy Connor. So in my opinion, very important video. Pay good attention, because I think with this video you can solve many of your positional problems in the Botvinnik variation with the black pieces. So if you're interested more into the Catalan opening from White's or from Black's perspective, please check out our series from the beginning, from the intro video, part 1, part 2, part 3, and so on, because in this video we'll maybe not discuss some lines that bother you, and maybe we have covered already them in our beautiful playlist of this sharp opening. So let's see now how to reach this position and how Black should counterplay the Botvinnik variation of this early queen to d3 move by White. So White opens with the move knight to f3, knight to f6, but you can really play a different move order. Basically the same position happens after move d5 and d4, and now after bishop to e7, White is playing the move g2 and is preparing now the move bishop to pardon me, g3 is playing now the move bishop to g2, and it's of course getting use of this long diagonal here of the light square bishop. Notice that we have now already a huge difference in the opening stage than we had previously in our videos, because now White already played the move knight to c3, and usually when your opponent is playing the move knight to c3, my recommendation is to play the move d takes c4. But in this video we will see a different approach, because this move d takes c4 is a certain idea of the open Catalan. So it's a different story. We're creating really already madness in the center of the board. This position already explodes in the center of the board. So in my opinion, you can play the open idea here, but I really wanted to show you a different approach, a more solid approach if you don't want to play the open, because many of us don't want to go into the open battle of the Catalan, don't want to go into tactical immediately opportunities for both sides. Many of us want to first defend, first play solid structure, first confirm the center of the board. So that's why after move g3 we should simply castle, and now after bishop to g2, now we are building this semi-Slav structure, which is slightly passive. We have to say it's not so aggressive like the move d takes c4, but of course it creates, I think, a solid structure. It creates first of all a good defense, and then afterwards we try to spice up the game, maybe counterplay White's ideas. So in the game kingside castling, of course White will play, and now we play this very important move b6. We have explained this move b6 previously also in our Catalan opening studies. We are preparing the move bishop to a6, hitting the pawn on c4, and we are waiting basically White to make now a reaction. If White in some of this line simply takes c takes d5, then we can play c takes d5, bishop to a6, bishop to b7 is good, knight to d7, rook to c8. So we have explained also previously this c takes d5 follow-up by White. So after move b6, White continues many times with the move b3, and now after move knight from b to d7, now comes the Botvinnik variation with the move queen to d3. And now pay good attention. Now it's very important how to play against this setup of White, how to play this very aggressive approach of White, because e4 is coming, and basically there's nothing that can be done this move will happen, but you have to know how to continue on from this point on. So the first important move is to move bishop to a6. It's a must move in my opinion, attacking the queen indirectly. Of course, the queen is not endangered immediately, but if something clears on this diagonal, the queen could be very endangered. Not only the queen, also the rook on f1 in some tactical lines is a huge threat here for white. So white continues with the normal plan e4, and now you have to first take out the correct pawn. The correct pawn to take here is the c pawn. If you play d takes e4 instead of d takes e4, I'm not saying that this is winning for white, that you get destroyed immediately, but look at this. After knight to e4, we are attacking the knight on f6 already, and you see now the long diagonal for the light square bishop is open. The bishop will come into the game. There is the opportunity to hop with the knight on e5, so many opportunities here only for white, I think. When we play the move d takes c4, notice that the long diagonal for the light square bishop is still locked. There is a pawn that's standing in the way of the light square bishop. So d takes c4 is the first correct choice that I would recommend you here with the black piece. So now after move b takes c4, now comes again another very important follow-up. We have to play the move e5. e5 is the way you go. If you play, for instance, c5, this is not so good because d5 is going to happen, and then white creates really storm here in the center of the board. So here when we play the move e5, basically we are forcing now white's reaction immediately. If d5 happens now, then we have knight to c5 will attack this one. The c4 pawn is still hanging, so in my opinion white needs now to make immediately a reaction with the move d takes e5. d takes e5 is seemingly winning a pawn, at least for a while now for white, but this is not working. D takes e5 leads, I think, into a simplified line here for black. Black has a solid game here. We simply continue with the move knight to g5, knight to g4, attacking now the pawn twice. And if white protects further the pawn, now comes a very important move g5. And we're following now a beautiful game played by Qxf3 against Hampi Koneru, in which the top grandmaster Hampi Koneru played here with the black pieces, outplayed really wild white here in this wild line. After move g5, white, for instance, takes here the move with the move knight to g5. If you play bishop to g5, bishop to g5, queen to g5, then of course also the knight on d7 is hanging, so that's why this is not working. You have to find another solution. Now we play first knight to e5, attacking the queen. The queen drops back. Now we pick up the pawn on c4 here. So see, you get your pawns back, but in a more tactical way. We have to be familiar with this line. After move knight to c4, the queen drops back, and now after move knight to e5, rook to d1, here even knight to d3 is a possibility. Look at this. There's simply really huge pressure around the square g5. The queen is hanging in the game between Qxf3 and Hampi Koneru. Qxf3 sacrificed the rook for the exchange, and black had a comfortable game and won the game eventually. Still, it's an open battle. It's still a tactical game. I really don't want to show you now what happens if happens, really this tactical tree all over the board, but I think this is solid. This is playable now for black, and in my opinion really a beautiful line that was introduced to us by Hampi Koneru. So let's go back. So as I said, after move e5, your opponent doesn't have to react with the move d takes e5. Your opponent could play here also the move knight to e2. Knight to e2 is, in my opinion, not so dangerous also for black to handle. We'll play simply a solid queen to c7, getting out of the 8th rank, and now we're preparing rook to d8, of course, connecting everything and also threaten the queen on the d file. Now the queen is endangered by the light square bishop's activity, but now in the continuation we're trying to endanger it further with the move rook to d8. For instance, so white continues with the move d takes e5 again. Then again we play this motif knight to g4. We will eventually recapture this pawn with one of this knights. So if something like bishop to b2 happens instead of the move d takes e5, then I think we can take, we have e takes d4, knight to d4, and again knight to c5. Look at this, all of these pawns are hanging here. Rook to d8 will play, in my opinion, again a beautiful game. For instance, white continues with knight to queen to e2. We pick up the pawn with knight to e4. You can play knight to f5, very dangerous move by white, but it's playable here because we can compete against this light bishop, against the dark square bishop, pardon me, with the move bishop to f6. And again, I think white has simplified the game enough. This is a solid game for black for sure. So after a move e5 that we play, in my opinion, the best move for white here is the move rook to d1, and we are following now a beautiful game now played by Jeroen Piket against Lev Polugaevsky. Pay good attention how Lev Polugaevsky is now playing the game. He's playing really a beautiful tactical line. After move rook to d1, obviously there is now huge pressure on the d file. There is a tension on the d file. The queen is a little bit endangered. So now the first thing that we need to do is here to pick up the pawn on d4 after e takes d4. For instance, if white takes out now with the queen, this isn't good. A queen to d4 is not so good because we simply play bishop to c5. Look at this. The queen drops back somewhere. We play knight to g4. The f2 pawn is weak. Still the c4 pawn is weak, so this is not working here for white. So white, that's why, needs to take out now with the knight here, the pawn on d4, and is threatening also to pick up the pawn on c6. But of course we have a counterplay. We have knight to e5, the queen drops back, and now queen to e8. This move is very important, getting out of the d file mess. If you don't react correctly, you could get destroyed with the attacks by the rook. So that's why queen to e8 is the correct choice. If, for instance, f4 happens now, this is again not working because we'll simply take out this one. You can maybe play the move e5, but now we play knight to d5, knight takes d5, c takes d5, bishop to d5, and now rook to c1. Here is a possibility for black. Look at this. We are protecting the pawn, the knight on c4. We have a 2 versus 1 pawn majority here on the queen side. If this game reaches the endgame stage, we can create maybe a distant pass pawn. Bishop to c5 is an opportunity. So in my opinion, nothing spectacular here for white. In my opinion, here even black should be maybe slightly better. So that's why let's go back. Instead of this move f4, white can also play the move bishop to f4. So we're following now again the game Piket versus Lev Polugaevsky. Here, after move bishop to f4, now we play a very important move, knight from f to d7, and now comes the tricky part here by white, bishop to h3. Bishop to h3 is an idea to somehow trade off this knight and pick up simply the pawn on c6, because after bishop to d2, if bishop to d7, if you play knight to d7, then of course the pawn on c6 is hanging. But now here Lev Polugaevsky plays the correct choice. Bishop to f6 connects everything to the pawn on e5. We have now here knight takes c6. Really dirty idea here by Jeroen Piket. Knight to c6 is a brilliant choice, because if black's now plays on the move knight to c6, then of course the knight on d7 is hanging. But now Lev Polugaevsky found the stunning tactic here that solves all of the positional problems here, and this is a line that you have to really memorize, that you have to know by heart, because if you don't play this line, you will get destroyed. So that's why I think this is a very important video. This position will happen to you if you're reaching, of course, the Botvinnik Variation, because this is sort of an aggressive way of white to destroy you. But there is a counter play. It's a beautiful choice. It's the move knight to f3. Knight to f3 is the way to go to protect yourself here, because after knight to f3, king to g2, there is now this beautiful idea, knight to c5. And look what happens, for instance, if you play king to f3, then we play bishop to c3, queen to c3, and you lose the battle here around the square e4. You can maybe drop back to g4, queen to c6. Look at this, bishop to c1 is going to happen. The king is naked here. The king is getting destroyed for sure. So after move knight to f3 and king to g2, knight to c5, of course the king takes f3 is not possible so far. So that's why here in the game Jeroen Piket played the move rook to d6, but now we play bishop to c3 anyway. We have queen to c3, bishop to b7, attacking now the knight on c6. In the game, Jeroen Piket took queen takes f3, bishop to c6, and now there is a huge problem around the square e4 here for white. So that's why king to g1 was played. We have knight to e4, we have rook to d5. Jeroen Piket simply gave up the rook for the exchange. Bishop to d5, c takes d5, and now f5, fixing simply the knight on e4. The knight is very powerful here in the game. Rook to e1 was played by Jeroen Piket, and now beautiful move again by Lev Polugaevsky, simplifying the game enough. I think trading of the queens is, in my opinion, a good choice here. We have bishop to g5, rook, queen takes rook on e1, king to g2, and after Queen to E4. Here Lev Polugaevsky simplify the game again. Queen to E4, f takes E4, bishop to E6, a check. Not the problem. We have king to F1, rook from A to E8. Then in this position, actually, Jeroen Piket resigns. So very tricky here. Let's go back. So this is now the critical line. Rook to D1. If that happens after your progressive idea E5, then we play E takes D4, queen to D4. As we said, it's not possible. Bishop to C5 is going to happen. If knight to D4, then a very important move, knight to E5, queen to C2, and now queen to E8. Let's go again back. Bishop to F4, knight to D7, bishop to H3, bishop to F6, knight to C6, and now knight to F3 is solving all of the positional problems. King to G2, knight to C5. Look at this, bishop on C3, queen to E4 is going to happen. Really beautiful, stunning game here by the legendary Lev Polugaevsky. So, okay, I hope that you realized the study. I hope that you enjoyed this particular setup, this particular defense. The most important thing, I think, in the beginning is after move queen to D3 to play the move bishop to A6. Then if your opponent is playing the move E4, first D takes C4. That's the way to go. After B takes C4, E5, and I think you can have a solid game. I'm not saying, of course, this is winning immediately for you, but this is the way to go. You have to break the pawn chain. You have to really destroy white center. If you don't do that, if you let your opponent storm towards you, I guarantee you will not have fun in this game. So that's why these two moves you have to play. Then maybe white will play a different direction, but I think you have solved so far many tactical but also position problems in the game. So okay, if you want to see more about the Catalan opening, some different sidelines, different opportunities for both sides, here's the link of our playlist. And if you like this content, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. See you soon with some more videos. And what to say, chess is the best, of course.